it's Amanda here from Lolli Lulu Crafts, and today we are going to be taking a look at the Holtz stamp platform with the idea of seeing some different techniques that we can use on the stamper. So first of all, we are going to be doing just a basic stamping. So I've got here a normal red rubber stamp. This is a Holtz one, and you just take advantage of the stamper by positioning your stamps onto your piece of cardstock and then picking it up onto the lid so that then they're in the right position, and then just inking up with basic black ink. So just a simple basic outline stamped image. And there we go, all stamped, comes out absolutely beautiful, ready to colour. So another regular basic type of stamping that we do is sentiment stamps. So for this I swapped it out and I have used a clear photopolymer stamp just to show you that it works both ways perfectly easily. But as you just saw, I forgot I need to turn it around, so make sure you always remember to flip your stamp lid so that it will work correctly. So what I'm going to do here is just show as well that when you make a mistake and you don't completely stamp an image or a sentiment, then the stamper allows you to restamp in the same place. As long as you don't move your card or your stamp, you can easily restamp and it will be absolutely perfect. And there you go, isn't that absolutely perfect? You wouldn't even know it had been restamped. Number 3 is solid stamps. Solid stamps are quite a fiddly stamp to stamp, so this is quite a good thing to stamp it on here, because you can of course restamp if necessary. I actually often start off by putting a layer of my Versamark first, which kind of makes the stamp sticky, and then the ink, the coloured ink that you put on, kind of adheres better. And then the coloured ink I'm using in this instance is the distress ink. So then you just pop it across, and as I say, you can then press it down, but if it's not perfect you can always restamp. But don't forget, give it a little bit of time to just settle, because quite often inks do sort of smooth out quite well, so just give it a little bit of time if it looks a little patchy, because quite often it will sort itself out. And also, as you saw, when you pulled it up, it kind of pulled the paper, so just watch that as well. And as you can see there, it kind of looked like I had lines. That was deliberate because I'd actually sort of swept the ink pad across the solid stamp there in order to create that effect. And then, just as a finishing touch, the sentiment to the centre. So next we have mirror stamping. Not a technique I've really made use of myself, but one I know that is potentially quite popular. So first of all, taking my little critter here, I am just stamping him down onto the card as per normal, the correct way round. So that just stamps as usual, perfectly lovely. So then we take him and we position him stamp line side up, so the side that you would ink facing upwards. So then he is reversed around. Then you take a solid stamp, so in this case I just took my little thought bubble. I've just roughly placed it over. I know he's going to move, but it just gives me a rough idea so that I know that where he is going to be where that solid stamp is. Then carefully ink up your stamp here, then go down, collect the ink onto your solid stamp so that then you get the impression onto the solid stamp. You can see it there, and then press down onto your cardstock and you get that mirror image on your cardstock. Now you'll see there that the colour was different to what was original. It was just that when I first did it, the pink didn't really show up, so I redid it for you in the blue. And then I'm just adding a sentiment underneath as a bit of fun again, just to finish that off. Next we have probably one of my favourite stamping techniques, and using one of my favourite companies for this technique, and that is layering. So basically what I mean by layering is you have one image and the stamp company have provided several layers that stamp on top of each other with different coloured inks in order to create a very dimensional painted effect, really. So the advantage of having the stamp platform is the ability to really ensure that your layers are absolutely lined up. I think you can do it okay with a normal stamp block, but if you're slightly out, it does make a difference, whereas with this it's much simpler to line it up because you're putting your stamp on top of your coloured image, picking it up with the lid so you know it's in the right place, and then when you pop it back down and stamp the next layer, you know it's completely lined up and absolutely accurate. So you'll see here where I'm positioning the next layer, making sure that it's all matching up, and then you take your next deepest colour and you ink your stamp, and by lining it up like that, each layer is going to sit precisely in the right place. I mean, the beauty of these stamps is if it isn't absolutely 100% perfect, it doesn't look terrible, but it does look amazing when you get them absolutely perfect. It really looks incredible. As you can see, we're building up those layers now, and it just looks like an artist's drawing. Absolutely stunning. Mind you, I am quite a big fan of Holtz anyway. But there are a lot of layering stamps out there now. Hero Art's another big one, I think, for that, and some really fun images as well. So I think for that, this stamp platform is really, really helpful. So there it is close up, and you can see how beautifully and accurate that looks. And then all I'm doing now is adding the leaves. You can see that's just the first layer. And there they are done, and a sentiment in the corner. So the next technique we've got is mass production. The beauty again of the stamp platform is that because you can position your stamp accurately, and then each time you stamp a layer, if you position your card in the same place, so in this case if you pop your card and it's the same size into the corner each time, then each time you stamp you will repeat the exact same design, and you'll be able to just keep stamping. And you know, if you're doing Christmas cards, for example, which is why I kind of picked this image, just really because that's where we often mass produce cards, then, or even like a wedding invite, but that makes it so much quicker because, as you can see, all I've got to do is just pop my card on, put the magnets on, re-ink. I don't have to keep moving the stamp or keep worrying that it's not absolutely accurate, because the other thing with mass production is you want them to be the same. Now I'm just flipping that over because I wanted to show that you can actually then repeat a second element to your mass production. It's not necessarily just one element, because it might be, I mean, obviously if you've got several elements that are sort of all the red rubber or all the clear, then you could do them together potentially, but if they're not, then you would need to do them separate. And as you can see, they're all absolutely perfect and all identical. Another technique that I think this stamp platform really aids us in is sort of repeat stamping, and a very typical one of that I would say is like your border stamps. So you've got here a lovely stitched border, so you ink that up and you create the first section, but you want to continue that on because say you're doing it on a 12 by 12, or just it's a very short border piece, or even if it's not actually a border stamp but you're actually creating a border with it, or anything. It doesn't even have to be borders. I just think this is obviously a good one. Now for this part I actually twisted it around because it's easier to allow your little piece of paper to pop out the end there rather than sort of bend it onto the side. But what I've done is I stamped it, and then I'm lining my stamp up so that it matches perfectly, and then I'm picking it up. I noticed that if I very carefully and lightly press the photopolymer, it doesn't pull the paper up. I can always press it down once I've opened the lid, and then I've re-inked it. I only put one magnet on because obviously I don't want to get the other magnet in the way when I stamp, but you will see that there's some ink onto the actual platform there. That is totally fine, it's not going to damage it. As you saw, it wipes off perfectly, and I deliberately showed you that so that you could see that it would come off. But I defy you to find the part where it actually linked together here, because it's stamped so beautifully. And obviously for this, I think for something like this, the photopolymer really helps you as well, because you can line it up very well. Technique number 8 is what I've called multiple stamp positioning. By this I mean not actual stamp layering, although this particular one is a combination of both, but actually where you've got, as in this case, a cupcake bottom and a cupcake top, and you want to make sure that it actually marries together really well and they line up. So not the actual layers, which obviously I'm just whipping through the layering here, but the actual section above where the cupcake, here you can see I'm positioning the second part of that stamp and being able to line it up beautifully to the bottom part. And there are a number of stamps, whether they're designed in that way or whether you're just putting together stamps where you want to sort of position them relative to each other. So this really helps you be able to do that and make sure that it's exactly where you want it to be. Now with this one, we've not only had to multiple position stamp it once with the top and the bottom, but we're having to do that several times because of the layering, so that's been kind of cool. Now this is a Stampin' Up stamp, and I think that's come out really well. So now we're doing something that isn't actually the layering, but we're just adding some other elements, which is what I was saying. Some stamps you just want to position things relative, and in this case we're adding some little sprinkles to our stamp cupcake here, and you'll see I added also the candle and some sentiments too. Okay, so for number 9 technique, I am creating my own background paper. Now the great thing about this is you could repeat it, of course, but also that you can, at accuracy, you can see exactly where you want to position stamps, where the elements fit in. So for example, it could be that, you know, with these flowers that it might not fit exactly correctly, so you have to move things about, and you can get to see that because you're positioning the stamp onto your piece of card, then picking it up with the lid and moving on, and so that makes it really helpful to see. So here, as it gets fuller, you can begin to see where you are able to put that particular flower in because of the way that you're able to pick the stamp up with the stamp platform lid. And there it is finished, and doesn't that look pretty? So for my penultimate technique, we are using this gorgeous Anna Griffin stamp set, and we are creating a multicoloured element. Now this is not like ombre or anything like that, but literally each element on this stamp will be different. Now I'm starting off with a base colour of pink, not for any other reason that so that when I do bits, if I miss any elements because I'm using pens, then it does have some ink on it. It's pale enough that these colours will stamp over it. So you can see what I'm doing here is I'm colouring in some of the elements. I can't colour it all in one go, it would dry out. And also I don't necessarily want the colours to all merge together. When you colour certain elements, particularly something as detailed as this, and if you coloured it all, you might find that your inks start to get a bit muddied over because you're touching sections with another colour and it kind of starts to blur together, so it's not always ideal. So there I used 2 colours, and you can start to see how that begins to build up, and I think it looks really effective. And these are just distress markers, but you could use any of your stamp pens, as long as you make sure it's a pen that can, you know, be cleaned off. You probably don't want to use your Copics or something, because I suspect that would be quite hard to clean off. And there you can see we just finished off at the top, and I left it kind of clear on the first pointy bit there, because that's where that pale pink just shows through. And there we have a completed multicolored element. I mean, I can see this for like Christmas wreaths, for example. I could see that working really well. And then the final technique that I've got for you is the ombre. I think this is probably one of my favorite ideas and techniques. I'm using here a red rubber background stamp from Stamping Up, but I think a really good one for that also is things like large sentiments would work really well. So what I'm doing is I'm doing each colour separately. The reason for that is to make sure that the colours don't muddy and that you don't sort of mess up your ink pads as well. So I'm just going further and further down the stamp. I'm just kind of guessing really where it needs to be, and then you'll see I'm just taking the cloth and kind of softening the top edge where it's going to be blending into the colour that I've already stamped, just so that it sort of makes that ombre effect really subtle and nicely blended. And there is the finished effect, and you can see once it dries it really softens. And that is it. So that is my 11 techniques. I hope that you have found it useful. I'm sure there is hundreds of more techniques that you could come up with to use with this platform, but at the moment I think I've covered all the main ones. But if and I hope that you found it helpful. I hope that you've enjoyed taking a look at how this platform works. But for now, thank you so much for watching. I will see you again soon, but otherwise, bye for now. Bye. Bye.